Hey guys, all right, welcome to this episode. This one is about dating. This is a
Exciting.
fun one. Little background, my history. I was married for 13 years, but before that, basically didn't date at all. I got married when I was 20 years old. It was the first guy I dated in college, married him, right? And so then after being married for 13 years, it was like, here you go, girlfriend. And yeah, I wound up in a very unhealthy relationship. And then it's been like regular dating after that. So I have found a very interesting experience. And Elle, Elle, you've been dating for a minute.
Well, you know what? I'm going to start with it's been like, okay, so I'm one of the earliest daters probably on planet Earth. So I grew up in downtown Chicago, which is not to excuse, but like when you grow up in a major city like that, we were all starting to have sex at age 13.
Wow. Wow.
13.
Wow.
That's like eighth grade. That's end of eighth grade going into, excuse my voice. Hold on one second. Sorry about this. So sorry, my voice is a little off today. So it was just sort of common, like that wasn't a weird thing. So by the time
Yeah.
I got to college and everyone was like, woohoo, drinks and boning. And I was like, we've been doing that for like, I was like,
Right.
I'm exhausted. No.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So you have some experience and insights there, and I'm excited to get into them because, like, man, this has been a journey for me for sure. So what we're going to do is we're doing two episodes here. In this first episode, we're going to talk about like mindset, the mindset piece around dating, like getting clear on what you want and little things that could trip you up along the way and just things to be aware of. I definitely learned. I'm like, I wish somebody had given me this episode. I
yeah.
really needed that, especially coming out of my divorce. Like, I had no idea. I was like, oh, just wing it. It'll be awesome. Oh, no, it wasn't awesome. And I've learned a lot along the way. And I've gone through a huge transformation. Actually, dating, I can't wait to get into this a little more because dating has been a wonderful mirror to me on where I'm at. So we'll get into that a little bit more. And our second episode is going to be more on like the mechanical aspect of dating, of like getting on dating apps and then the actual date experience and all of that. So first, let's jump into our mindset around dating. And I think a good place to start is getting clear with what you want, right? Because like everything, we don't do this. We're just like la-di-da-di-da. And some loser dude comes along and he's like, wow,
Or
you're
chick.
pretty. And yeah, and you're like, I am? I didn't know I was pretty. Let's get married. I mean, okay, so let's back it up. What do you think is a worthwhile way, for somebody to get clear on what they want in dating?
I would say, well, let's just break it down to the first basic, which is before you decide the kind of person you want, there's so many ways to go into looking at that. Let's talk about yourself. Like, are you still struggling with sexual identity? Are there still some things that are confusing there? Don't be bringing that into a relationship. Get that shit worked out, right? There's no shame in it, but like again,
Right.
that's going to end up in despair. If you're really gay and you're so ashamed of it and you're in a relationship, whether you have a beard and you're gay, doesn't matter. That is going to cause problems. So as clear as you can get about who you are, like just your sexuality, because that's the thing right now. People are confused or they're not
For
sure. So
sure.
I would say, hey, if you're having any kind of confusion on where you are there, please seek out some guidance and advice to help guide you on what it is that you want or what you're looking for there. So that's just a very like intro level, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
base.
Great
That's
point.
that's the baseline.
Yeah. Get to know
Because look, I mean,
yourself.
I've known people who've married people and then, 20 years in, they're like, I'm gay. And it's like,
Hmm.
really? Really?
Hmm.
Like, and they knew it. So don't
Hmm.
be that guy. Don't be that girl. And I also have known it the other way. I've had, known someone whose wife left them because they were truly gay and they never really acknowledged it, but they knew the whole time. So again, as clear as you can get on who you are and what you want, your sexuality, just your identification is probably the best way to start. And then I would say, here's the thing. So let's say you're 20 years old and you're watching this. What I wanted at 20 and what I thought I knew I want is very different than being in my 40s. So look, you're gonna learn, right? You're gonna learn this stuff. So no matter where you're at, it could change. And relationships is a reflection of us. It is a mirror. It is a part of growing. So I always start with like, okay, this is kind of my blanket because you could meet a guy, Tara, that has everything in common with you. You like to do all the same stuff. You like all the same music. You like all the same food. I mean, you could just be like perfectly compatible that way. However, this is what I've really figured out over the years throughout. And I've almost been married a couple of times and I've lived with guys. I've been in like about 4 or 5 very serious relationships over the years. And I would say that the biggest thing, if I could just put an overall, is you have to like and admire the way the person thinks about things and the world, the way they operate. So That doesn't matter what it is, because that could be politics, religion. It doesn't matter what the categories are. You have to look at that person and be like, I like the way they look at things, right?
Right.
You know, if someone's blown up in the car during traffic and are rude to waitresses or whatever, I mean, and if you're cool with that, like, whatever, then that's your guy because you like the way they look at the world, right? So that's what I have found, because you can have all these things in common and you can have attraction and all of this stuff. But if you're looking at this other person and you're just like, you know, you want to be able to admire and like the way someone thinks about things. And that takes time to get to know, to see people in environments and how they react to stressful things. This takes getting to know someone, and you can usually find out, and you will, within the first 3 months of dating someone.
Yeah, man, that's a wonderful point. That's really insightful. And it brought to my mind while you're saying that, I think another thing is, you know, because I've done these lists or these qualities, and it's a good thing to do, you know, to really dig in. But one thing I learned in that process too was to look at that list, make your list, just freaking make it, right? These are all the things that I'm looking for in my ideal partner. And then examine that list to see if any of those things are filling a hole that you have in yourself. Right. So is it like they're very affectionate or loving or, you know, those kind of things? It's like, you know, pause to ask yourself, like, is the reason I feel I need that in someone else because I don't give that to myself enough? No, that's not what it is. I just enjoy that. Okay, cool. But I think it's a worthwhile, like, self-examination, because I think sometimes we can prioritize things that we're looking for in other people to fill a void that we see in ourselves. And so, you know, when you have, like, when that's free, when that's clear, when that's out, when you fill your own cup completely, now you can be like, wow, like, I just super enjoy this person's presence. I super enjoy the way they see the world. Like, this is fun. This is cool. Like, and then you get out of this neediness place, right? Because I definitely didn't do that. I definitely had all sorts of needs and low self-esteem. And that's what wound me up in like a crazy, crazy controlling, manipulative relationship where I was pleasing and out of my power. And like, you know, it was terrible. And it's because I just didn't know. I didn't know this stuff.
And you ignored your gut because you couldn't define it, but you ignored it. And that's the other thing too, right? No matter what, if it don't feel right, it's not right. I don't care if the guy's got everything on the thing or whatever. There's something there. You noticed something. Yep. You just couldn't wrap your head around it, and you were new. My gosh, most people out of long marriages who are back in the dating scene fall into things like this. This is just like you were primed for that experience.
I was.
Everybody is, right? I also too, when you're looking at the qualities you want in another person. I used a book, and we'll talk about a couple books here. I used a book called Calling in the One by Katharine Woodward Thomas, which is a really great book. And it's a 7-week thing. You're supposed to do it once a week, but you can just read it through and asking yourself these questions that she has you ask. And it really brought me in like the perfect mate that had everything on my list. And like I talk about this in my book, Confident as Fuck, I had not cleaned up my shame about my disability. I was not vulnerable and emotionally available, and I attracted an emotional robot, and we were at the perfect relationship and everything was great except for that. That was the biggest deal breaker. I wasn't willing to live the rest of my life with no one being able to turn over to me before bed and going, I love you, or expressing words of appreciation. But I was a freaking robot, right? So again, if you're looking for someone in something, are you that too? And you might need to consider that. Now that might not be equal, like, well, I want someone to provide for me, but you know, I don't make it as much. That's fine. There's certain dynamics, and especially straight relationships, like that's not necessarily you have to be equal. I think you have to be equal vibrationally on those kind of things that you're looking for. Do you know what I mean? Like if you want someone who's affectionate, are you willing to give that back? You know, I had an experience. I have so many great dating experiences. I had one where I showed up to the date and the guy wasn't even the person of the photo he posted, like completely.
Oh my gosh, you did?
I've had that. Like, he ran into the wrong person because I read him the riot act. But I had a guy I was on a date with. I was on a second or third date with, and he like picked me up and we parked somewhere and he put a handicap thing in the mirror. And I was like, what are you?
Oh, wow.
And he says, well, I had like, you know, an injury like a couple years ago and it's fine now, but I keep renewing it so I can get the parking. And to me, if people aren't listening to this, I'm holding up my middle finger. That tells you everything about a person, right? I don't want to be that. Right. I look at that. I don't like the way that person thinks about the world.
Right.
That's
right.
a great.
And that's that gut moment that you're talking about. Like, yeah, I'm definitely going to listen to that, because stuff like that would happen when I wasn't listening to my gut, and I would be like, that's weird, but let me make him feel comfortable right now, and please, and ha ha ha, oh, I totally get it. But inside I'm like, there's no check-in with myself of like, ew, like, you know, it's like admitting those feelings. I was not experienced with that. And I think, you know, this brings to mind another thing that I noticed, that I've noticed a lot in the dating world, something that I used to play into. I used to fall for this. This used to be flirting to me. And it's this negging thing, right? So I think guys do this more than women, but guys will do this thing where they tease you to flirt with you, right? They make fun of you to flirt with you. And seriously, gym culture, rampant. This is like the number one thing gym bros do to hit on chicks, is they will come make fun of you and tease you. And I used to be in this very powerless place where I would do this, oh, he, and then now we're flirting. Now we're talking. Now when guys do that, now that I have found more power in myself, I'm like, I see straight through you. I see straight through you. It's not attractive to me because I have that self-respect for myself. And so when they don't give that to me, I'm like, excuse you, and that shows me a lot of where I've come. And I think that this is something that I see, it's become, I thought about it really truly. And I was like, gosh, I bet like, the guy who's doing it and the girl who's receiving it, like they both do this to themselves a lot, probably. It's this negative, joking to kind of cover up pain. It's become like a habit. But I've noticed, like, especially for girls, like women, if some guy comes up to you and he makes fun of you, don't do the like, don't embrace that as like a fun, flirty moment. Just stand up for yourself and see how he handles it.
Just so you know, there are books written for guys on how to go up and like backhand compliments. So for example, there's a book where it's like, this would be the strategy. You go up to a girl and you're like, wow, Tara, you're really, really pretty. I mean, you're not like model pretty, but you're really pretty.
Oh, wow.
And again, here's the thing. If you're ever feeling that you need to...
That makes me want to punch him. I seriously, like the punch
author?
Reflex.
Yeah, absolutely. But here's the thing. It works on people who shouldn't be in a relationship because you haven't figured your shit out for yourself and your self-worth. And let's get back to clarity for a second. So people might be like, well, I want to be married, and what kind of expert are you? You're not married, whatever. You haven't found what you're looking. Well, here's the thing. I never wanted kids since I was 3 years old. Okay. This was very problematic in my 20s and 30s because every guy was like, I don't know, maybe, I don't think so, I'm not sure. Well, guess what? They all ended up having kids. So that would have been the deal breaker anyway, and it became a deal breaker. I wasn't clear. I was clear in my body, in my soul. I knew 99.9% I didn't want children, yet I was, social pressures. Yep. Oh, you'll wait one day, you'll want them. Oh, maybe. And this didn't work because I'd get into relationships with guys that I would say they kind of wanted kids someday, maybe not. But again, wasn't clear. Now, in your 20s and 30s, not a lot of people are clear. When you get to 40, people have either had their freaking kids, or at least at this age, they know when they want them or not. I didn't feel like I could really get to the point of finding my guy until I was 40. Do you know what I'm saying? In a way, just because of that. So you got to be clear about that too. And on the converse, if you want children and you meet a guy and he's like, I don't really want. Listen to that. People will tell you who you are. You're not going to convince a guy that he wants kids. I was just talking to a guy the other day, and he was saying, that he meets these women, and even though he says, like, I already have kids, I'm totally done. Like, there's no way I'm having kids. They'll, like, try to, like, well, don't, you know what I mean? No. If you want kids, you want someone that was born, like, I have my male friends that have kids. They want kids. They love kids. They've wanted kids since high school. They knew it.
Exactly. I'm like, do you want to convince the future father of your children that he wants your children? Right. That's how you want to start that out? No. So like, it's like, I really, I've thought about this a lot because being Mormon and that's such a strong pressure in my background of you have kids. It's truly the number one, it is the purpose of women. It is the calling of women. The number one thing you can do with your life is have children. And I really, I've been vulnerable and open about this because I really had to process that when I left Mormonism, because growing up, I did not want kids.
Oh, really?
Personally, I did not want kids. Nope. And I was in high school, and all my Mormon friends at church, they'd say like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And they're all like planning out their wedding and their babies. And I literally, my soul was like, ew, no, like that is like the last thing I want to do. I was like, I want to go have a career. I'm going to be living in Colombia as like the ambassador. I was like totally career focused. And I was like, yeah, and then I'll have kids, So like being in that environment though, over so many years, it was just like, dude, this is what you do. This is the right thing to do. This is what God wants me to do. And this is what I'm going to do. So I have 4 kids. And when I left Mormonism, I went through a crisis, and I've talked to other moms, that left Mormonism. They've been open with me that they went through the same thing, because they're like, wow, like I made these life decisions based off that framework that I was in that was kind of out of alignment with what I actually wanted to do. Whoa, how do I make sense of this now? And I had to go on a real deep discovery journey of that and understanding that it was very healing, understanding truly kind of this Byron Katie principle of loving what is and understanding that everything happens for us and not to us. And it was now that that's been healed, like, I'm like, they bring so much into my life that there's no freaking, no one would trade
no
their
one would
kids
ever
away
trade them
after
back. Yeah.
you've had them, it's just, but I can see the wisdom and I see the wisdom in that life path for me. But, going through that whole crisis though, going through that experience, I realized, like people really need to have the freedom and from a society standpoint to be parents or not, to be, I feel like some people are naturally wired this way. They freaking love it. I know a lot of people here in Utah have like 7 kids, that's like common here. They love it. They love it. That's all they want to do. That's their whole world. And then there's other people that are like, dude, that's not an alignment for me. Like that does not even come close to being interesting to me. And it's like, why can't we allow this?
Yeah, so don't check off a box, people. That's really
Yeah.
and that's the thing that I never did that I'm happy I didn't, because I tell you what, even though if I had a child here, of course no one's gonna say they're gonna take back their kid or what. But at the end of the day, I actually have met lots of people who, through social construction, you can tell they got married and kids because thought that was right. And they're not really enjoying it. You could tell they would take it back if they could go back in time. They would. And you don't want to be there. And again, not that they're in regret every day. They see their child, they love them, but you can tell they're longing and living vicariously through their single friends, wishing they hadn't, but they were pressured by family, religion, or whatever. So get clear about the kids thing. And if you're not, then be honest that you're not clear. I always used to be like, pretty sure no, but like, I don't know. I'm leaving a little window open, but the window was only open because I got social construction. I had people say to me like, you don't want to have kids. Isn't that selfish? I was like, I'm sorry. It's selfish to bring kids into this world in an overpopulated, that's selfish, to some degree. Like, if anything, I'm helping out. But at the end of the day, like, no, it's not, because, and by the way, I've worked with kids my whole life and I love them. And that's probably one of so you could give me your I would have so much fun if you just be like, hey, I won't come to my house for a week while I'm on vacation, take perform. I'd be like, yes, that would be so much fun for me.
Yeah.
So I love them. It's not that I'm not maternal and don't love babies and kids. I didn't want them for myself, but I would love to marry someone that does have children. I'm okay with both. Like I'm happy. So get clear about that. And then also I would say, and I don't know if you have more on kids, because I was going to move on to something else. But.
Well, just dating when you have kids, that, also like get really clear on stuff ahead of time. I did not do that. So we get really clear on like, okay, what am I okay with from a timeline standpoint of how long I'm going to date before I introduce this person to my kids? Get really clear on when you start dating them. Ask them honestly how they feel about the fact that I have 4 kids. That is a kind of a big deal, and I've had some guys that it's been really interesting because I had a huge insecurity about this. So at first I was like, oh my gosh, no one's going to want to be with me forever. I got 4 kids. Like, this is such a huge thing. And I had a couple of guys that I dated that you could tell truly, like, it was not an issue for them. They were like, dude, I do not care. Like, that is not an issue for me at all. I love kids. Like, whatever. Like, that's not a thing. And then I've dated guys where you could tell it was a thing. It's like, ooh, okay, yeah, that's kind of, that's a lot. That's not what I was planning on, but like, let me see, and I get that. But I think, understanding that there's going to be other people out there that are welcoming to the fact. In fact, I'm in a place now where I kind of rather date someone who does already have kids, because there's a certain compassion that comes in. So, but be clear about it, understand like what you want and what you're okay with, and having those boundaries. And also know, like, your kids are not they're not a downside when you're dating, when you have kids. Like, I definitely lived in that reality of like, oh, this is going to this is a burden. And I am in such a like, F that place now. I'm like, no, this is my life. And if you want to be part of this with me, like we're all going to have to adapt to that too. Like, we're not just some burden. So like, if that's not cool and exciting and awesome for you, like, we're good here, And so I think getting really clear about, what you want and what you expect and how your kids, this is a process for them too. And then also coming into it in confidence, knowing that if somebody doesn't want to date you because you have kids, please,
Don't
for the
date
love
them,
of God,
damn it. Jeez.
don't date them. Don't try to please them and please God. Okay.
Yeah. So marriage, same thing. So I want to be married. For now, if you're talking to someone or you hear someone on the profile and they're like, or you're talking on the phone and I've had people be like, oh, never getting married again. Guess what? Shut it down. It's never going to happen. You're not going to convince that guy. Move on. It's the same with the kids.
Yeah.
It's the same with the kids. Get clear about what you want with that. Like, do you want, because here's the thing. What you'll do is you'll like sell your soul to be like, well, I don't need the piece. Like, this is what guys will say. They'll be like, well, I mean, like, I miss being married, but like, I don't need the piece of paper. That's not too much of a red flag, but it still is a flag. It's like, no, you want someone that wants the same thing.
Yeah. Right.
You have to have the same future goals,
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you want to travel the world and be single, then like, yeah, you're not going to be settling down. You know what I mean? We'll talk later, in the second episode about like details and profiles and what people write and how you can detect certain things from what they say. But these are the kind of things when people are like, well, I just don't think you need a piece of paper to have okay, well, guess what? That guy's not marriage material.
Yeah. And I think, if you've been divorced, you get burned. You're pretty burned on marriage for a while. And I fully admit I'm still kind of in that place.
And there are a lot of people there, and that's okay to be there. You don't need to get married again. Like there's no problem with that. Right. But again, get kind of clear about where you are. And if you're unclear, at least be honest about being unclear. Like, hey, I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet. Like, while I value it and I was married at one point, I'm not sure. But at least you're just being honest and transparent, and that's all that you can do. Don't try to acquiesce or fit your story to match some cute guy because you're getting attention. And the next one I'll say, and this is like a real hot topic for me. The only difference between you and me and a guy friend, and our friends and partners is sex. It's the only difference. I don't F my friends. You don't either. Right? Okay. Right. So that's the difference between friendships and love partnerships. It is a very important factor. You have to know where you stand there. So my first thing would be like, all right, look, do you have some issues sexually you need to deal with? Like, were you molested? Do you have some issues anyway with like any kind of issues there? Like, hey, go work them out. Go work them out first. Get, you still have to work stuff out through relationships, but like get some therapy, get some coaching around these things that you might be dealing with there. The other thing too is like, how's your libido? Be honest with yourself. Right. Okay. Right. And this one really gets me because and by the way, this is guys and girls too, because not all guys have raging libidos either. Okay. And there's some people with broken D's out there too. God bless them. But listen, like that is, this is a real serious thing because couples fight over sex and money. End of story, period. Those are the two categories. If I hear one more married guy brag about having sex with his wife, I'm going to jump off a bridge. Guess what? It's marital duty for a reason it was called that. You're a deal breaker. You broke that deal. So don't be the person that's all sexual and then you get the ring on your finger and now you're going to blow off your husband. That is cruel. And I feel the same way about a guy, and I've been in those relationships too. You don't want to be in a relationship where you have to go masturbate in the bathroom because you're constantly getting rejected for sex. No. Right. So it's important to me, but it may not be important to you. Then you need to meet someone who is also doesn't care as much. But you have to get that straight. I know people that have been married for 20 years that never was right from the beginning. They continued on. They're still not getting it. It's lacking in their life. This is a disaster. This is a disaster. And it's, by the way, it's really unfair. I consider it very mean. Like, that's the deal. Like, if you're my girlfriend, like, that's the deal we made because we're lovers. So I shouldn't be rejected for sex unless you have the flu, someone died, we're on you know what I mean? Short of like life experiences, even if I didn't feel like it, I love my guy. And if I just like, whatever, I am a period or I'm a cramp or whatever, if short of flu and other stuff, I would still want to please my man because that's what you do when you love someone. So you got to get straight with your sexuality. I know that's a bad way to phrase that, but you just got to get clear about that and work through it. If you want a better libido, work on it. And if you don't have one you're not that interested in, then you might need to consider, like, honestly, this is the way I just look at it, like, this is the deal you made with your partner. So I just hear too many times, and I've seen it too many times over my lifetime, where like everyone's like, well, my wife used to give me BJs, and then we got engaged, and then when we got married, stopped, and then like asked her like, hey, what's up? That used to happen. And she's like, I don't know, I'm not in, like, I don't know, it was a phase. You know what? I'm sorry. That is not acceptable to me. That is trickery. That is trickery.
Well, to me, my perspective on this is like, what is going on? Why don't you have libido? Now, it may be a physiological issue. It may be. You may have like really low testosterone or, poor gut health or poor mental health or something that's really physiologically affecting your libido. But come on now, let's talk about the emotional stuff. What is going on there? And this is the thing. Like with my ex-husband, there were so many times like I did not want to have sex. Like there was like literally nothing I wanted to do less than have sex with him many, many times. And it was an issue in our marriage. But you know what was going on was he was being super cruel to our children and super rude to me and disrespectful. And like the last thing I'm feeling is attracted to him in that moment.
Legit.
But I wasn't doing anything about it. So like that's on me. That's the part where it was like really truly, I mean, I look back at it I see the innocence there. Like I didn't know. I was just like, I guess I don't know. I guess I just don't like sex, which is like, guess what happened after I got out of that relationship that was unhealthy? Oh, surprise. I totally have a sex drive. Like definitely. And so like that for me was a really beautiful, it was kind of an indicator that something's really going on here. If you don't have a sex drive, guys, like that is one of the number one indicators of health. So if you don't have a sex drive, there is either something physiological or emotional going on that you must deal with for your own health. So yes.
Yeah. And by the way, on that note too, if you have erectile dysfunction and you're a guy, do not lie about it to a woman. Don't think you're going to be able to get away with popping a Viagra on the sly because look, actually this has happened before. Someone tried to trick me on that one. I was like, how long was I going to keep that up for? Pun intended. But here's the thing. They knew the reason it was so deceiving is that we had a big talk about this, kind of like we're having now on like a fourth date or something. We had some really intimate conversations and I said, I told like how important sex was to me and that I didn't want anyone who had any issues in the bedroom. He right there should have been like, I have erectile dysfunction. But he, again, hit it to try to, and then how do you think that worked out? It didn't. And that's cruel because that's leading me on in a direction. I actually had and these are like young, healthy guys. I had another conversation with someone and I'm glad that it was like we'd gone out a couple times and then we had like a deep conversation once. And I bring these things up, in conversations like, hey, how do you feel about this? And it was revealed that his last two wives left him because of sexual intimacy issues. And I said, hey.
You're like, I got to go actually, because this is just a waste of time beyond this moment.
Totally. But first of all, I said, oh my God, first of all, thank you for sharing this. It's a really weird discussion. I know it's a vulnerable thing. It's awkward, but this is really cool. We're being open. And I said, here's the thing. I am the worst choice for you then. I am the worst choice for you. And he tried to fight it. He was like, well, and this, I'm laughing now because he goes, well, I mean, like, I want to snuggle and like hold hands with you. I'm like, yeah, I want that fucking too. I just need both of them. I'm not going to take one or the other, bro. And stop trying to convince me as a highly sexual woman that somehow, and by the way, he wasn't willing to take testosterone. He wasn't willing to do anything about it biologically in that kind of way. And my thing is that if I'm with a guy and here's the way I look at it. My philosophy this is my personal philosophy, is that I want a person who, when they get to a certain age, if they start losing interest for some reason, they're going to go to 500 doctors to figure out why and get it back. Because they love sex so much, they're bummed they don't want it anymore. And that's how I am. That's how I am. And so I need a person who, like, this is a very important part of life. By the way, 80% of the success of relationships are the sexual connection. Mm-hmm. It's a huge factor. So this is like such a big thing. You got to know where you stand. And also, let's say you are really unsexual. Well, then if you want to be in a relationship with someone who's sexual, like you're going to have to participate like willingly and lovingly. And maybe it's more of a gift. I don't care what it is, but it's not going to work out usually unless both parties are on the same page. And
that goes back to your first point too, of you got to get to know yourself and your sexuality, not just your sexual orientation, but like what turns you on, what you like what you've got to freaking touch yourself. You've got to explore yourself. You've got to see what qualities really turn you on and which ones are healthy. What's a healthy turn on, right? Like, cause I've been in relationships where it's just sex. I was not in a healthy place. And I've been in a healthier place where it's freaking beautiful. Right. And so like, what does that look like? What does freaking beautiful sex look like to you? What is that to you? Like identifying these things ahead of time. So then when you find it, you can celebrate it instead of just being like, oh, I guess this is awesome. Like, so I think identifying, know what you're looking for, know what you value,
And know
so
what
that way
your
when you
limits
get it-
are. Like I had a friend who met someone that was very like, he wanted to be a dom. He wanted a submissive. He was very into the BDSM stuff, and that power play. And
that seems like it would go really well with you.
well, that wasn't with me. It was a friend of mine, but she had a very similar
Oh, okay.
personality, and it didn't go well because at first she entertained it for a minute. She entertained it because it was like,
Right.
this could be kind of kinky, whatever.
Try
And
it.
then it was like, yeah, fuck this guy, right? So again, like, don't sacrifice yourself for something that someone else wants that you don't. If someone's like, I'm really into whatever, and you're like, oh dear God, guess what? Don't, man, don't. Like, so you got to be on the same page with your partner about that. And these conversations can come up later, and you're usually just naturally found out. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, the sex thing is really important. So you had, I want to mention, I did a women's empowerment project with a fellow podcaster, Katharine Martel, on YouTube. They're all free. But in there are lots of interviews with authors and people who wrote books about healing themselves from sexual trauma. One of them was a book called Oh, and it was like finding your orgasm, getting rid of trauma. There's lots, so go to Women's Empowerment Project on YouTube, everybody, and look at Karen and ours interviews and just look at the ones that are the authors on the sex stuff or orgasms. There's like just tons of these authors. Like I think we interviewed at least 4 or 5 people that had, and they're just free interviews. They're just free. We did that a couple of years ago.
How do they find that?
Just go to YouTube. You can go to women's.
Okay.
You can go to riseupkickass.com, and that'll take you to the YouTube channel, or just literally go to YouTube and type in Women's Empowerment Project Elle Russ, and that channel should pop up with all the videos. But Karen interviewed at least 4 or 5 women about trauma, sexual trauma, or also just there's one woman on there talking about all sorts of ways to do orgasms. Like, I'm learning new shit. Like, what? I didn't even know. So there's some interesting stuff in there for free.
Yeah.
That you can
ladies,
go look at.
if you've had sexual trauma, holy shit. Like you have to. And I'm saying I'm coming from a place of knowing because I've had it and I didn't talk about it and I didn't deal with it. And guess what? The person who was doing this to me would tell me that they loved me when they were doing this to me. And guess what happened when my husband was making love to me and would say, I love you. Trigger. And now I'm in like, ugh, gross. Please don't say that. How sad is that? Please don't say that.
It makes me kind of want. I am sad. I got goosebumps.
So sad, right? So that sucks. That's just how it was. But let me share that. If you haven't dealt with your sexual trauma on your own level, because once I did, and it was a freaking journey. And yes, it was plant medicines and therapists and all of it, just personal exploration, all of it. Guess what I found in sex after that? Innocence, clean slate, clean discovery, joy, beauty. But until that's healed, you're going to have all these weird, crazy ass like thought patterns and triggers and all this stuff. So if you have sexual trauma, which probably at least half of you do statistically, please deal with it so you can find joy in sex again. Okay.
Absolutely. No, so I'm a big one on the sex thing. That's a huge. And by the way, not everyone's raised that way. There are people that are raised to be ashamed. It's a dirty thing,
Right.
There are these kind of things that don't have to do with trauma, but they have to do with the kind of stories you were told. So the reason I'm not surprised I am the way that I am is that my grandparents valued sex incredibly, and they they were to the end, like 88, like people were making jokes in our family like, oh, the rabbits up there, like it was always a thing. My parents, in fact, when we had some family members, a male and female, that were having some trouble, and my mother said to my father at the time, like, oh, I heard they're not having sex, and my dad was like, uh-oh. Then they were both like, uh-oh, because that is, and this, let me give you an example of how important it is. This is a great line from a movie called Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, old Paul Newman a movie. And in it, he and his wife in the movie are staying at their parents' house and they're having horrible, horrible fights. And the grandmother comes up to their room and she slams her hand down on the bed and she says, problems that start here, end here. And I was like, shit, that's the best line I've heard in a movie. And like that bitch is right. She's like, grandma knows what she's talking about. So, it's a very important thing. It was very open in my family. Look, I had the luxury of that. Okay. But so and there's some people that come from trauma and have it too. But again, like you said, work it out. We want you to get to the point where you love it. It's fun. And it should not be And you're just going to be so much more primed for that experience. And then also too, and then we'll get into the details just on the second part of like, how long do you wait for sex or STD testing? I mean, I'll tell you everything about that. But in terms of getting clear, and I wrote a couple notes on there. But so moving on from sex, I would say also too is not compromising things you want. Like, do you want to live in a certain place? Do you drinking, any kind of substance stuff? And again, this goes to things in common, what you're not willing to put up with. Like, so, you know, I won't date a big drinker. And so like, if I meet people and you can tell, and people who are really huge drinkers often try to hide it and you can kind of tell. And so, you know, when I send someone that's kind of like a drinky type of person, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going there either, because that's also something you can't fix about them. So you just can't ignore these signs and signals with people. And
yeah, it goes back to boundaries. It goes back to our boundaries conversation. These are your boundaries. Find out what your boundaries are. So you're not just like, well, you know, I hate this tone of voice from like my sister or my friends or me. And Dane's like, well, yeah, but I mean, he's a really good guy. That tone, if you say, yeah, but when you're talking about him and then it's over, done. Please just freaking listen to yourself. Listen to that tone. That tone of voice is you out of your power, justifying. It's not your energy should be like, oh yeah, like, oh, it's amazing. That's it. Like, yeah, you might be like, I don't know what to do about this or that or the other, but not like, yeah, but these general statements of he's a good guy, but like over, done. Like, listen to yourself, have some courage, grow a pair, break up with it, move on, set yourself free. Another tip that somebody gave me that was like life-changing for me was she had gone through a divorce, and a lot of her friends had, and they'd gone through a lot of therapy. And she's like, girl, I'm telling you, this is like the one piece of treasure that we all pulled out of this whole experience from all of us. And it was, when you date guys, you can either continue to live in comfortable hell or live in uncomfortable heaven. And what I mean by that is, if you keep getting in these like relationships that are, you know, maybe toxic, or maybe they're just like, they're just not what you're looking for. And and it's like almost the same kind of guys, the controlling, manipulative guys, or the like no drive, like, you know, blamey guys, or it's like, whatever it is. I bet if you keep noticing a pattern, this is what she told me, because I definitely was leaning towards the more like the hot shot, manipulative, you know, those kind of guys. And she was like, Tara, just do me a favor. She's like, the next time you have an opportunity that you're like somewhat attracted to like a guy that seems really nerdy and like not that cool to you, can you just go out with him, please? She's like, just go out with him. And like somebody that wouldn't be like, oh, wow, he's amazing. Just a nice guy, just a normal, nice guy that is nice to you, that you're attracted to. I'm like, okay, did it. Freaking change the game for me. I was like, this is what dating can be like. He was so respectful. He was so kind. He was so genuinely interested in getting to know me. He planned dates with fun little extras and went the extra mile for all these little things. And it changed my life. So I was like, that's some damn good advice. Like, so if you keep falling into the same patterns, oh my gosh, how about just for one try somebody totally different, see what you learn and extract out of that, right? So
a date is not a commitment to date somebody forever. It's just you're just meeting and getting to know someone. You're giving someone a shot you otherwise wouldn't. And I've learned that too. Like, some people aren't really good on the phone, but you get a vibe about them. Mm-hmm. And as long as it's a good vibe and you're attracted to them, even if you're like, well, I don't know if they're that funny or smart or whatever, but if you're getting a good vibe and they seem like a good person, then you go out there, because you can be talking to someone that's smart and funny, hilarious, and not get a good vibe and not want to meet them. So it really goes back to the gut. And I would say this goes, I was thinking about, we were talking about Will Smith on one of these things, and I don't know Will Smith, but I would say, you know, women who are like, oh my God, like a guy like Will Smith, right? And I would say that the reason people would look at Will Smith and go, oh my God, now we see him, like, we don't know his personal life. Maybe he's a terrible guy. But like, what we see of him, what is projected, is one thing we do know. He's kind of like a stand-up family guy. He's been married a while. He cares about his family. He's a family guy. So that's very attractive to a lot of women. But the other thing too is, like, he's always happy, right? His vibe is always good vibes. Like, we're drawn to that. So the other side of it too is not just admiring the way people think about the world, but also there's a lot of people that would claim themselves to be positive. People often in profiles and in dating will tell you who they want to be, but not who they are. And then you get around them and they're water cooler complainer talk all the time. And you're like, oh my gosh, right? So does this person let something stressful roll off their back or not? And this goes for guys and girls too. Everything we're saying can go the other way with men, with sex, with everything. You need to also find a woman who is on the same page with you. You know what I mean? So everything we're saying can be transferred to either which way you cut it. And you'll be drained around someone that's negative. Are they lifting you up? How do you feel we've talked about this with friends and, jealousy. It's like, how do you feel after you've hung out with them? You know what I mean? Are you elated? Are you lifted up?
Right.
And like you said, there's no confusion either. I interviewed a woman. She wrote a great book, by the way, for people called The Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissist. And her name is Debbie Mirza. And I interviewed her on the Primal Blueprint podcast not too long ago. If you've been in a relationship with someone you feel was kind of verbally or even like subtly abuses or gaslighting you, this will be a vindication book for you. But in that scenario, it's like, you're always forgiving, excusing, and again, it doesn't feel right, and you can't put your finger on it. You don't need to put your finger on it. That is the finger.
Yes, that's so beautiful. Thank you for saying that. I have learned that lesson. You don't have to put your finger on it. If it feels wrong, it is.
Trust it, and go. You'll get a prize. You'll get a prize. You're gonna get a prize.
Yes, she speaks the truth. Listen to her. This is a wise woman. It's so true. I just did it, and I got a prize. And also, it was freaking hard and scary, but you get your prize.
You get your prize. And also, I'll say, so when I was 20 and stuff, I would have never ever wanted or would think that I'd be compatible with someone that was outdoorsy and athletic, because at that time I was just I was just a fat didn't work out and was so you know what I mean? And I'm different now. I would not be willing to, but like you said, I'm not looking for someone that's got an 8-pack. I'm looking for someone who's just generally taking care of themselves and active. And again, these are the kind of things and if you don't eat, are you expecting someone that's into health and whatever when you're not? Again, try to mirror all of those things. I think I said on one podcast, I was a smoker trying to find a non-smoker until I realized I should probably just become the non-smoker. That will probably end up working, and it did. So I think those things there's lots of compatibility factors, but those are kind of the main ones we're talking about that are overall. But again, it's if you're looking at the person you're dating with, it's just ugh, because of the way they think about something, that's a really bad sign. You should really look up to and admire who you are with. That is one of my biggest qualities on my list. And I have a 4-pager of I'm so grateful now that my soulmate husband or whatever. And on there are lists of we make each other laugh. We have the same sexual, whatever, all the stuff. But a lot of it is he's respected and admired by his peers. This is a really important thing for me. But also, guess what? I am.
Right.
I'm not asking for something that I'm not either. I'm not some shitbag that's dicking over everyone and a total jerk. And I want someone who's, honorable and full of integrity. I am that person. Yep. And I want someone also who's admired and respected by their peers. Do you want to date someone that people are just ugh, and always getting into drama, and you can sense this, right? And we talk about those things where you see how people are with their friends, their family. Listen, if you are a guy and you hate your mom, you got to work on that stuff, right?
There's nothing less attractive, guys. You got to work through that crap.
100%. And they won't treat you right if they don't like their mom either.
That's a deal breaker for me. And it's almost a deal breaker if they don't love their mom. I'm if you can't honor your mother and the fact that she brought you life and took care of you till you were freaking 18 years old. I know she wasn't perfect. My mom wasn't perfect either. And sometimes I didn't feel loved. And sometimes I felt like she abandoned me and wasn't there for me, but I still freaking love her. And if you can't see that, you're not gonna be able to see me. That's how I feel. At least that's how I am. So
and that
it's
could be one of the things you put out. I want someone who loves their parents, who has a really good relationship. And if they don't, then they've resolved it. If they don't, they've gotten through it.
Right.
So we've all, by the way, same with guys. If you've got a woman who hates her dad, she's got daddy issues, you got to work through that too. My daddy issue was that, and I put this in my book, was that, my dad was an alcoholic and a really fun one. So people kind of excused it because he was the cool dad. You know what I mean? And so he never beat anyone or there was no, he kind of got away with murder on that one. Do you know what I'm saying? But I looked at him with such what a loser, lost all of our money, can't trust guys. So my story from him, I had daddy issues, but the issues were about trusting men because and then I really had to do the work. And that's where calling in the one by Katharine Woodward Thomas came in because she asked some questions in there about each parent. And when I got to the questions about my dad, streamers down the eyes, just,
Beautiful.
I was like, shit, I gotta get with this. I am attracting these things because it's what I'm expecting, because this was the reflection, right? So that's no fun for a guy to deal with either, right? So you got to go through scraping your own barnacles off and cleaning up your life, right?
It's so worth it.
So worth it. And by the way, there's someone for everyone. I am so tired of people being like, well, that's easy for you guys. I had a friend who said this to me. She goes, easy for you to say because you're pretty. I was like, there's no easy or not easy. Because I still have to choose someone else too. So just because 500 guys might be like, she's pretty and I might be available for me, I don't know that I'm going to like any of them either. In fact, I find it to be absolutely equal. There are people who may not be considered your typical, pretty, whatever. There's someone for everyone. There are people at 80 who find love. There are people who are disabled who find love. Like it's out there for you. So that's the self-esteem part and the work you're going to have to do on your own, but it's available. And I see that more than the other. I see that more than the other.
Right. And if those are the questions you're asking, like, man, think how much you're blocking. Think how much love you might be blocking. Because this was, for me, when my self-esteem was really, really low after my divorce, I remember, it sounds so shallow. I was not in a good place. But I remember seeing guys that I thought would be like, I thought they were like the hottest guy I've ever seen in my entire life, that are like way out of my league. And I would see him with women that seemed like, to me, looked, average. And I was like, I remember having the moment of like, oh, wait, could I get a guy that hot? Right. I remember being in that low self-esteem place of like thinking, nobody wants me. Really, truly. Like and it was all a reflection of me. It was just this all in my head. It was all this not seeing myself, not loving myself, not honoring myself. Think how much I could have been blocking because I'm like, oh, well, he wouldn't like me, So if you're in that place, like, dude, you might be blocking stuff left and right. So start filling your cup. You get your butt out to freaking nature and you start walking and you start listening and you start working on all that self-love, because I think like we can block so much out of our life when we're in that place. So
go ahead.
This is a bit of a pet peeve of mine, I think, a little bit, the low self-esteem and the comparing, because I guess it just frustrates me because I see the beauty. I see there, and I'm just like, it frustrates me because I'm like, how can you not see it? But I relate to it because I was there at one point. So just work on that. Because now, like, truly, guess what else happened? I used to like see my before pictures and say, hey, like, ooh, like, whoa, look how I used to look gross. And look how I look now. And that's shifted as my self-love has filled. And so there was a guy that made a comment about like, wow, I seriously can't believe you looked like that before. And I was like, I was just thinking how cute I was. I mean, yeah, sure, I was chubbier, but I was like this cute little thing, like I was sweet. I was just a sweetheart, and I was like, the fact that he couldn't see that, I was like, yep, all I need to know. Goodbye. So yeah, like once you get that self-love filled up for yourself, it's just like, it completely changes the game, and you stop getting lost down all these like roads that you didn't ever need to go down, and you start opening up gates that you had locked. I mean, it is really, really cool. The last thing I want to hit on this episode, Elle, before, like, cause I know we might hit on it on the mechanical one, but I really want to hit this, is breaking up. Is moving on. The actual act of saying, this is not an alignment for me. Now, the biggest message I want to get across here that I have learned through his experience as a, lifetime people pleaser is that you have zero control over another person's feelings. You have no control over their
sexual desire, which is what this is.
And they have zero control over your feelings. And this is for my people pleasers out there, because I have wound up in crazy ass relationships for way longer than I ever needed to, because I didn't want to hurt somebody's feelings, because I perceived that I had that power. You don't have that power. You cannot control their feelings. You could say, hey, I honor you. I respect you. This is not a perfect fit for me. Please don't take it personally. Don't even have to say that, but it's just I honor and respect you. It's just, this is not feeling in alignment for me. The way they react is out of your control. You could have somebody say, hey, like, dude, I get it. Thank you for being honest. And I honor and respect you. And I want you to be happy on your journey. And yes, I'm going to miss you, but like, I totally respect that. Or they could be like, seriously? So you just strung me along this whole time? It's like, no, I've come to this conclusion, but you can't control that. And please don't stay in something that's out of alignment for your life to avoid that one uncomfortable conversation. Please listen to your gut and honor it. I am begging you, because I lived out of alignment for so much longer than, maybe it was, I think everything happens for a reason, perfectly as it does. But man, that was a long learning lesson. When 2 months in to this crazy relationship I got in after my divorce, I was like, oh my God, what is this? This is psycho. I have got to get out. And he cried and bawled his eyes out. And I just love you so much. And I was so scared. And I fell for that shit. I fell for it. And I stayed in for over a year after that. And the whole time, guys, I'm freaking neurotic all up in my head, like looking up stuff online. Like, is this normal? This is weird. And I'm not talking to anybody.
And now you know now, if you're even doing the search, you know.
Yeah, no. I'm like, hey, can you be my intuition for me, Google?
You're trying to Google your gut.
Yeah, man. It was so like, God, like, just stick to your guns, and you don't have control. If he wants to cry and he wants to blame and he wants to throw a big hissy fit about it, you have zero control over that, but you got to do what's right by you. So especially for my sweetheart little pleasers out there that have a hard time standing up for yourself sometimes, please understand that you can't control their response. You can only control what you feel, and you have to honor what you feel. You have to honor that, because you got a whole journey ahead of you. And this could be a hiccup, or it could be a freaking pit that you're stuck in forever. Like, have the courage to make it a hiccup. So I
got a couple thoughts here. Well, yeah. Okay. So here's the thing about breaking up. Here's the easiest way for everyone to do it. This is the best, no drama way to do it. And I think I said this maybe.
Yes, I love this. Yeah, say it again, because I was trying to tell someone this the other day.
So if you're breaking up with someone, now here's the thing, and like, it's not just a conversation about like, hey, we're having a rough patch. Like, like you have to do this. Okay.
Right.
You never give a fucking reason. Let me explain. So let's say you are breaking up with them because they're rude. Let's say you are breaking them because you don't like the way they treat you. Let's say, does it fucking matter? You're breaking up with them. You don't need to tell them. They're going to be, defense is the first act of war, Byron Katie. They're going to, you can't argue with, I'm just not feeling it anymore. That you can't argue with. But someone can argue with, what do you mean I don't treat you right? What about the time, now you're going to go down that rabbit hole and have a 5-hour breakup discussion where now both of you hate each other and you just ripped on all their bad qualities because you told them all the reasons you broke up with them for? Why the fuck would you do that? Stop being an asshole and just break up with them. And so here's what happened. Wow. I broke up with a guy once, many years ago. You know what? Nice guy. Okay. Really. But he was kind of a complainer, a whiner. And like, there's other things about him. I was just like, I didn't like the way he looked at the world. Okay. I didn't like the way that he looked at the world. So right. I knew I had to break up with him, but it didn't seem like there was anything happening to like justify that. So he kept questioning me. He was like, but I don't understand. Like last week, everything was great. Like we're having a good time. And he kept, cause he didn't want it to break up. So he kept questioning. And here's the thing. Do you think I said, well, I think you're kind of a whiner. I think you're a whiny this. I think, no. I said, I know. I don't know what to say other than I'm just not feeling it. I don't, but, I know. I kept repeating. I know, it's weird, but I can't help the way that I feel. I'm just not feeling that way for you anymore. Like, you're a great guy. I like all these things about you. I'm just not feeling it. I don't, but did something happen? I said, no. And again, kept repeating the same thing. Mm-hmm. Guess what? Guess where that ended up? We were friendly for years. He was a writer. I happened to have called him years later to be like, how do I do a book proposal? He gave me the information. We've been friendly this whole time. I haven't talked to him in years, but we were friendly. You know what? What if I told him the reasons I was breaking up with him? He's going to go out there and hate me and have like, what a bad vibes. It's bad juju, man. You don't need to punish someone on your way out. Just get out. And by the way, they can't argue with you not wanting to be with them anymore and having feelings for you. Can't argue with feelings. You can argue with reasons. So don't give them reasons. Don't. Even if they're very obvious, because who cares? You're leaving them. And people are like, well, I want them to, that's the mistake I think every girl, when I have a girlfriend call me, she'll be like, and I told him that, I go, well, you just lost the game right there. That was a fuck up. You just, no. It puts you in a weaker position too. Just, you're out. And then there's some hope for some good vibes around that situation later on or not. And I'll tell you another story too, and this just has nothing to do with specifics, but I dated a guy like 17 years ago and we almost moved. He bought a house for us. We were very much like on this track. he had lied to me about some things. We found out. I also was going through hypothyroidism and didn't know what it was yet. So I was sick and messed up, and I'm sure my emotional gauge was all off because of hypothyroidism. Long story short, we had a bad falling out. A couple of years later, I wasn't interested in ever. I was like, I'll never talk to this guy again. And a friend of mine wanted me to reach out to him for something. And I was like, but it was my best friend, so I did the favor. We ended up connecting again. He has been one of my best friends for 15 years now. One of my best friends. I mean, he's one of my emergency contacts. I love him. Ew, gross, no. We'd have no it. There's no, it's like a brother. It's like, right? We have no attraction. There's nothing there. But we are best friends. So was that a failed operation?
Right.
No, it wasn't. So none of these things are failures, the breakups, whatever. They're all about teaching you about yourself, but also you never know when something like that could happen. I mean, I'm so grateful that I could have never predicted I would ever talk to him again. Like I was, there was like no way. I was like, that's the one ex-boyfriend I won't ever talk to. And he's literally one of my closest, best friends. So again, like I can't look at that shitty situation and think like, I wish I never got into that. And so, a lot of us are going to think that out of a crappy thing. Like, oh my God, I wish I could erase that whole thing. No, you learn from it. You learn more about what you want and what you don't want. And on top of that, you never know. Like, again, even with that little light breakup with that guy where I didn't tell him the reasons, who was the writer, hey. And then also too, he's not out there. And every time he sees me in the ether thinking like these negative things I said about him, that I could have told him all these reasons. Like, we're going to sit there and chastise someone when you break up with them. Get some, pick yourself up. And I was going to be like, get some balls. Seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
So that's the best way to break up. And people can't control that. They can't control not telling you, but you have to. You have to just keep going back to the same script. Now, on this note, I had my ass handed to me on this one. I was dating someone very seriously, and I was telling them my philosophy on this. I don't know how it came up. One of our friends was breaking up or something. Told them this philosophy, and then when they broke up with me, they pulled that on me. And I was even like, but wait, I don't know.
It made you crazy. I'm sure it made you crazy.
A little bit, but here's the thing. I'm kind of glad they did.
Right.
Because I don't know that I wanted to hear and I would have argued with them, and I'd still be today being like, they were wrong, but whatever it was, I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's the nicest, best, cleanest way to do it. So I suggest that.
Yeah. Wow. This is so interesting. I mean, that's like really a groundbreaking way of looking at breakups, because no one does this. Everyone's like, you did this and this and this. And no, I don't. And it's only because of you and blah, blah, blah. And it's like this crazy, horrible thing. And what good comes out of it? You're the same outcome. The same outcome is we're breaking up.
The same
Except now somebody's walked away with lower self-esteem and the other person feels like an asshole. So like, and it never works. It's just, it turns into an argument. And I think, I know I have a lady in a mastermind with me. Her name's Hazel Ortega, and she's just this boss babe. She is amazing. And she was like telling me about her parenting philosophy, and she's Latina, and she is very strong in who she is, and her kids know what's up and they do what mom says. And she said that she's like, this is how I do it with my kids. I tell them what I want them to do, and they say why. And I tell them why. And then they'll come back and they say, but why? And she's like, one time I will repeat myself and say, I already told you why. And every other time they keep saying, but why, but why, but why? I just ignore them. It's just silence. They don't get any more answer from me. And it reminds me of that a little bit, of this like principle of like, we want to know why, but actually we don't, they just want to wait. They want a way to change it. They want it's almost like they're begging for the why.
That's right.
So they can get control over the situation again.
And then is arguing your point, and then you get further into ripping on the person, because now you got to go deeper down the hole of whatever that. It's just like, it's like a fucking mess. It's a total disaster. It's a total train wreck shit show. I just learned my lesson after years of dating, where I was like, I'm just going to end it with no reasons. There's no... Unless the reason is so obvious, like you walk in and they're sleeping with your sister, like, yeah, I think we know why I left you. You fucking my mom or whatever, horrible. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. But we're
getting way more comfortable on this.
That's true. Yeah, we were. But here's the thing, like, really, like, I mean, at the end of the day, oh man, it's just so much strife, and that's being a mature, taking the high road position. Because why do you need to prove yourself to them? You've already said F it. You've already said no. If you're actually going to make that call or make that text or whatever the hell it is. And by the way, I will say this with breaking up. So, and we can get into specifics on the next one later, but so I have guys, friends call me all the time to ask me about dating women online and what to do. If you've only dated someone very briefly, like nothing's been serious and like you've had a few dates and you're not feeling it, first of all, don't break up with anyone in person. That's kind of how I feel in general. And
really?
I'm not saying that if you're in a marriage, you might need to sit down. But like if you're, or living with a person. But if it's not, I'm about a phone call. And if it's very like a brief relation, because I think it's an awkward situation to do it in
definitely.
person. It's very awkward. The person who's being broke up with, they're like, I would be like, fuck you. Why'd you bring me in person? Like you could have told me this over the phone. Like now I'm looking at you. Ew, like jerk. Right? So
I just did this. It was awful, Elle. It was awful. It was like,
no.
I did.
You broke my rule.
Yeah. No, it was in person. It was horrible. It was awful. And then it's like you still have these feelings of wanting to like hug each other, kind of, but it's
that's weird.
bad.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
It's better to have a phone conversation, I think. And it depends on how long the relationship is. I think a phone conversation. But here's the thing. If it's someone that's brief, like you've gone on a few dates, or even like I dated someone, or like you dated with someone for like a month and maybe you've seen them a few times, but nothing, again, very serious or anything, then in that case, like, I don't know that you need a phone call, especially if it's just a few dates and nothing really got beyond maybe a kiss or so. Like, and that could be a text that, and by the way, I have it written down on my phone because all my friends are like, what's that spiel you give again? And the spiel is something like, hey, I think you're a really awesome person. I'm just not feeling the dating vibes. Right. And again, it goes back to like, I'm just not feeling the je ne sais quoi chemistry and dating vibes, but I wish you the best of luck and you're cool or whatever it is. But just real quick. And again, like, I don't think, and that could be even after a second date when you don't think you want to date the person and you're like, this is a phone call. No, it's not a phone call. It's a text.
Right.
That's okay to text that one, right? Like, hey, I really enjoyed these past 2 dates. I think you're great. Thanks for all the conversation. Just not feeling that chemistry vibe, but I think you're awesome and I wish you luck. Like, that is the way to do that. You know what I mean? And then if it's with something more serious, if you're living with them, maybe it's in person. If you're not living with them, phone call. If you're married, obviously in the same house, that might be it. But yeah, the in-person is... Did you regret it afterwards? Were you like, oh God? What?
It was one of the most brutal experiences ever. I mean, it's just 3 hours of like, and I gave little reasons why, but I was like trying so hard to like still keep it positive. But then it was like, wait, what? No, I don't. I'm like, I know it's okay that you, it was just freaking brutal. It was awful. It's like, I'm trying to like,
when you get more into the trap of giving a reason if you're in person than if you're on the phone, because you can really control that more than being with the person. Cause it's easier to be repetitive with that kind of script of like, I think you're awesome. I'm just not feeling, cause here's the thing. Isn't that the only truth about it, really? The one truth about the reason you want to be with this person is you're not feeling that thing for them. And it doesn't matter all of the reasons, the
micro reasons.
The micro reasons why. Yeah, fucking micro, new word, new term. No, micro reasons why. So just avoid the micro reasons and get down to the truth, which you know what the truth is? I don't want to sleep with you anymore. Well, usually, or like you just don't want to be with that person. Like you may still be attracted to them, so that can always apply. But yeah, man. So I don't know. That's
feel cruel. It does feel cruel. It's like, well, I'm not sexually attracted to you, and you're kind of whiny, and like you kind of see the world kind of small. Do you really want me to tell you that I feel like you have a small outlook on life? Like,
right? Oh my God! Like, don't offend these people.
That I think that doesn't mean I'm right. It's just how I feel. And that matters. So that's why I don't want to be with you. But I'm not going to freaking leave you with like, hey, I dumped you and here's a whole bunch of shitty stuff for you to consider about yourself.
Yeah. And that's just like pushing the hurt even further. And again, like, here's the thing. Even if you're like, well, they deserve, if anything, they're going to be walking away going, I'm glad that bitch broke up with me because she just ripped on me for 5 hours. I want to share a couple of books that are great too. Aside from Calling in the One by Katharine Woodward Thomas. That's amazing. Soulmate Secret by Arielle Ford. I love Arielle. I've interviewed her a couple times. So Arielle was one of these really high-powered alpha entrepreneurs. Like she published all of Deepak Chopra work. Like she's amazing. And one day she woke up when she was 44 and she's like, oh shit, I forgot to get married. Like what? I'm 44. Like what? So she used the law of attraction in her life with her business all those years. And she thought, well, what if I use the law of attraction for attracting a mate? And she's still with that guy 20 years later. It's a really great story. Wow. The audio book is great because it's read by her, but that's called The Soulmate Secret. Then there's another one called Practical Intuition in Love by Laura Day, which someone recommended to me recently. And I looked through it and that's lovely too. That has such a soul examination. Those are probably my three top ones on that. The other thing too is that there are great free affirmations on YouTube. I Love You Are Creators with Justin Perry, this guy that does all these great affirmations. And he's got like relationship affirmation. You could wake up in the morning, you play it, and it just has his voice being like, my partner brings me so much joy. Like just a bunch of like relationship affirmations that are positive. And so, but those books is where I would start, and then go to Women's Empowerment Project on YouTube and look at some of those sexual ones if you are having some issues there. And there are a few, like I said earlier, that aren't just about trauma, but that are even like just extra exploring your sexuality. And I guess we should mention from Paleo FX, older woman, Susan Bratton is like a sexpert, and Bratton, and she, no holds barred with her. She's very prolific. She's very out there in terms of nothing is off limits. And she is all about, just check out her work, because there might be there's something for you for exploring your sexuality. If there's someone out there that like has had trouble having orgasms or needs to like wants to explore more of their sexuality, like she's a very sexy older woman. And her story was that, and I was sitting right next to her and her husband at Paleo FX last year, and I was like, how'd you get into this? And she's like, well, I started to like, my husband and I were having sex, and he started to go sleep with a bunch of other married women who were disappointed with their husbands. And I was like, hold on a minute. So she was like, I got to figure this out. Like, I don't want to lose my husband. I need to figure this out. And so she literally just went the entire other direction. Right. So those are some resources.
Lots to explore there. And I'm taking notes. So we'll get those in the show notes for you guys. But next episode, please don't miss this, especially if you're in the dating world, or, even if you're not in the dating world, there's a lot of stuff coming up here just in relationships that I think is like something worthwhile to take a look at. So join us for the next episode. We're going to go into more of like the mechanical side of dating. It should just be pretty freaking fun. I'm excited for that one. So
also check out Tara's new launch of her Keto.
Yes, thank you. Keto membership. So if you want new training plans and meal plans every month that are either keto or low carb, you can switch as you want as you go along the journey. And I give you guidance on that. That's all on my website on CoachTaraGarrison.com. Thank you. And of course, you guys, if you don't want to read Elle's book, Confident as Fuck, after listening to this conversation, then I don't know what's wrong with you. Because I'm like, okay, I mean, I've read the book and it's freaking amazing, but I love your confidence. I love your like no nonsense attitude of like, no, listen, like unapologetic for this is how I see life and this is what I want, and that's okay.
But that doesn't mean I haven't been in horrible gaslighting, yucky, abusive things for a while. I've been in them, man. So I've been there. Like I know what it's like. I remember quick one. I remember 3 months into a relationship being like, oh my God, I'm dating this family member, right? Like a family member that I had that, and
literally,
I still dated them for like another 8, but like I knew in that moment, I saw the narcissism. I knew it. And I ignored it. So I've been in those too. We've all been stuck in them. There is no shame in that. It's just like, let's clean that up and move on to a new vibration, a new attraction. And since then, life's been pretty good. Yeah. Also, was there something about podcasting or oh, so even if you're watching this on YouTube right now, you may be listening to it, but if you're watching on YouTube and you subscribe, that's great. Please subscribe. We really appreciate it. But also go to Apple Podcasts. Please write us a review. We'd love that. All reviews count. And that's it.
Thank you. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you in the next one.